Zoro is a fraud. Yes, you heard that correctly. Zoro a fraud.
You're a phony! Hey, this guy's a great big phony!
I can already hear the Zoro fans typing away, but let me walk that statement back just a little bit and explain. Zoro's dream is to be the world's greatest swordsman. You know it, I know it, everyone knows it. It's no secret. In chapter 52, when Zoro was defeated by Mihawk and he reaffirms his dream that he will never lose again and will one day defeat Mihawk to become the world's greatest swordsman, I was thoroughly pumped. Not just for the chance to see him finally get to fight Mihawk again, which I was super excited for because Mihawk didn't just beat him. Let's be honest, he destroyed him with a pocket knife, broke his swords, and he embarrassed him. Honestly, I was excited because I just knew on the road ahead, Zoro would have many challenges and have to get through many other swordsmen before he got a chance at the king again. It just really made sense to me and was my first initial thoughts when it happened in the story, but as we know, that's not the case. Now, before we go any further, I love Zoro as a character and as a Straw Hat. He's dope as hell and definitely the most badass out of all the Straw Hats, easily. When he fights, Oda just gives him a certain energy about him that Oda really doesn't give to other characters that much. Clearly, he's not a fraud in a normal sense, but just hear me out and let me plead my case. Over the course of the story, Zoro has fought many strong opponents thus far. The One Piece formula is he usually fights the second strongest, with Luffy fighting the first and Sanji the third. A lot of his opponents were able to challenge him in some aspect, but never really as a swordsman. Out of all Zoro opponents, only a couple were swordsmen, and none truly pushed him to his limits or breaking point, with the exception of Daz Bones, as Zoro was damn near on death's door. And I guess he counts, but he was more so a literal sword man. Kaku was strong for sure, but he didn't really push Zoro to his limits, as after he was defeated, Zoro literally was just chilling and went out to help others. Hachi was only really a challenge because Zoro was fresh off his fight with Mihawk. If he had been fresh, Hachi would have been destroyed even faster. Ryuma was a good test, but he was literally fighting a hundreds of year old corpse. I would say Zoro's fight with King was one that definitely pushed him to his absolute limits, but there's caveats. Zoro was extremely damaged when the fight began, only being held together by some super mink drug, and King literally stated himself he wasn't a swordsman. He did learn a lot in battle and most definitely came out overall stronger in the end, but the fact still stands. I feel like no one has really propelled him in terms of striving to be the world's greatest swordsman. Like, before Zoro, was there anyone else who wanted to be the world's greatest swordsman? Or just Mihawk? Think about it like this. Luffy's dream is to become the king of the pirates. We all know this. Over the course of the story, which at this point is nearly 1100 chapters, we have not only seen him, but his dream to become Pirate King challenged time after time. It goes without fail that in almost every arc is challenged to some degree. Yes, now of course that makes sense because we are in the final saga of the story, so rightfully it will come into play, but that's the thing. This dream has been getting challenged since way back in the beginning of the story when no one thought it was even close. Now, I know what some of you may be thinking, well duh, he's the main character, and I agree. However, I would argue besides Luffy, Zoro is the next guy in line in the Straw Hats, and I will say to the story in general who gets the next amount of shine. I feel like throughout the story, Zoro should have been facing more people, more specifically more swordsmen with the same goal and dream as him to become the world's greatest swordsman. The title of world's greatest swordsman is a serious title and one that holds extreme weight and carries great prestige. It's not something just anyone can have or get. It truly means something to be the world's strongest at anything, let alone the world's strongest swordsman. Everyone in the story, including the Marines, even recognize Mihawk as the world's greatest swordsman. We know how huge and wide the One Piece world is, and just how many wild and powerful characters live in it. In a world this vast, majority of the people do not have devil fruits. It may seem like a lot just because the Straw Hats run into people who do, but for majority of the rest of the world, that's not the case. Most either use a firearm, hockey if they're naturally inclined or know of it, maybe hand-to-hand combat, but most likely a sword. Think about the Marines. They have, in no exaggeration, thousands of members, and only the top of the top get a chance to get a devil fruit. You're telling me not one Marine who ever trained with a sword ever wanted to be the greatest? In my mind, it just made sense that Zoro would fight and come up against other guys who wanted to be the world's greatest swordsman. It just felt like that would be the natural progression for him, whether it was beating guys that Mihawk had already faced or facing guys who wanted to fight Mihawk still. It just seems to me that it would add another interesting dynamic to the story. This would have made sense even after the time skip with more swordsmen after Zoro because he had trained under Mihawk for 2 years and they wanted to face him because, well, he trained under Mihawk. This would be a plus if they would get the boost from beating Mihawk's student, and this would surely be something to get his attention. I know we've seen Vista and Mihawk clash back in Marineford, and honestly, from what we've seen, Vista didn't look all that bad against him. Neither really broke a sweat. Now, take that with a grain of salt as they both agreed they should have a proper fight some other time later in the future, but we never seen it. then went on to get crushed with the rest of the Whitebeard pirates when they went up against Blackbeard, never to be seen again. Now, I do think we will get to see Mihawk fight again before he fights Zoro, but this time more seriously. I say this mostly because we are in the final saga of the story, and just like Oda's giving us a showing of Shanks vs. Kid, I think he wants to showcase all the heavyweight characters in the series, just seeing what they're capable of before their truly respective battles. Literally, any of the guys he fought could have just said, "It's my dream to one day defeat Mihawk and become the world's greatest swordsman." Or this even could have been a guy who went up against Mihawk and he lost. So now he wants to take it out on all the up-and-coming swordsmen and he want to crush them just like Mihawk crushed him. Kinda like Moria after facing Kaido. None of the guys Zoro ever fight really get an extensive backstory besides King a little bit, so it wouldn't have been that hard to shoehorn it in. Now, as we all know, Zoro has a fight coming up with Shiryu of the Rain, and it's going to be a great one. He is 100% a swordsman, if not a dirty one at that. It may have been kind of nitpicky to think of this, but I wholeheartedly think this would have added so many subtle layers to not only Zoro's journey, but to him as a character. We know that the next time he fights Mihawk, it's almost guaranteed Zoro will defeat him and become the world's greatest swordsman. I just don't want the fight to feel like, yeah, we fought once a few years ago, I beat a couple regular Devil Fruit guys now. I think this will be the time that Oda really dives into what happened to Zoro during his 2-year time skip. Good to see what happens to Zoro's eye, whether it's some type of power-up or whether Mihawk took it as payment. I want the victory to feel just as sweet as when Luffy becomes the king of the pirates. Because we know as One Piece fans, we're going to smile and cry right along with Luffy. Zoro is absolutely one of the hardest working and deserving characters in One Piece. He deserves the same. As we know, when he wins and he finally becomes the world's greatest swordsman, his victory will reach the heavens. If you made it this far, thanks for watching.